And people forget, and a lot of us, it happens to all of us, we forget that, yes, we are sacred and we are part of the universe and we are divine, but we are also living the human experience.
Yeah.
And the human experience is a shit show.
Welcome to Chance Today and Jackie. I'm Jackie Smith, and today I'm talking with Wendy Mata, who is the author of Brujería, Curandísimo, Spells, Rituals, and Ancestor from a Mexican Healer and Witch. And today we are going to talk about working with the ancestors, spiritual bypassing, calcification, and other amazing things that she has in her book. And let me tell you a little bit about Wendy. She is a 5th generation brujera. She's also an initiated shaman, a lunar priestess, a founder of Brujería, Power Botanica. Her new book explores ancestral relationships, energetic healing. I don't know if I'm going to say this right, limpias, which is really exciting because it's something that I do in my own tradition. Protection and a very practical responsibility that comes with spiritual work. And I am loving this book and I'm dove in head first. And Wendy, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, I discovered you. That's a very silly way to say it. So I learned about you when you put the call out on social media, because I think we are friends on Facebook. And then I saw your call on social media. I'm like, me, I want you on my show. And then I didn't understand how fully I wanted to talk to you about this. So can you correctly pronounce the name of your book for me and everyone else?
It's called Bruja Curandera. That's how you say it. Spells and Rituals from a Mexican Healer and Witch.
Cool. Awesome. Because, I'm American and I didn't grow up with these words. And even though I've read them a million times, you ever have that word that you read in a book a million times and then you say it out loud and people are like, what are you talking about? And you're like, I don't know. It's just how I thought it was pronounced. So
I think it's really beautiful to not know how to pronounce something because that's how we learn. I've had the blessing in my life of learning multiple languages, and the first steps is always trying to learn how to pronounce things and know what they are. And then they open up to a world of like, why do you pronounce it like that? And how does other people pronounce it? And what does he mean? So it's all good. There's plenty of things that I say that are wrong in English.
Good. We're even.
Yes.
Here's what I love about your book, and this is why everyone should buy it, is because you're not just rattling off, do this, do this, do this. Here's some spells. What you're doing is you're bringing us fully into the depth of what it means to be this type of healer and magician and how to become a magical person. I'm reading this book and I'm like literally shouting out loud going, yes, this is the way it is, because you start with ancestors. And and you talk about how ancestors are just messy. Working with ancestors is messy. It's just like a relationship with a family. And that we must understand this before we begin really working our magic. And you make such a strong point about how ancestors are really an entryway into magic. So let's talk about that a little bit and why that's so important in your tradition and what you do.
So just to give an example, at least in my tradition and my own personal practices of really the meaning or the power of the voice of our ancestors. So I was in the technology world for 20 years. I was in cybersecurity and digital forensics before I became a full-time bruja. And in 2018, I took my husband and my daughter to Mexico to show them the Day of the Dead or Dia de Muertos, because it's just an important celebration for us. And I wanted them to see it and experience it and know what it means in our world, right? I was introducing my husband a little bit or more into what it means to be a Mexican, and for my daughter to also honor that side of her roots, her roots. And in that day, in the Day of the Dead, I had a dream of my grandmother. My grandmother, who's my mom's mom, came in my dream and she told me that I had to drop everything that I had been building for 20 years. I was a senior director of new product introduction and cybersecurity. And she told me that I had to teach. She told me that she actually gave me recipes in my dream, plus some of other things that I had observed from teachers. And she told me that I had to leave my job. which was very wild.
Yes.
It was very wild. Very,
And
very
really, and hard to follow. It's hard to follow when they tell you these big things. Stop.
and
Stop and enjoy
I
your life.
right, exactly. Change everything because I'm telling you in a dream and that's how it is. So I negotiated for many years until one day in this relationship with my ancestors and in this relationship with the ones that came before me, I asked, okay, if this is what you want from me, then it's going to have to make sense because, my job pays the bills and we have a kid and we have a mortgage and we have to eat and all the other things in life. And when I had that conversation with my ancestors, specifically with my grandmother, but my ancestors in general, I said, you're going to please demonstrate me and show me that this is the right thing. And I'm not making stuff up in my brain. And what happened was that one of my videos, I had a very small candle shop in my kitchen at that point. I was running it from my kitchen. One of my videos went viral in TikTok the next day. Like I'm telling my ancestors this the night before. And then the next day, I wake up to 2.7 million views in one of my videos. Very silly, simple video. And I had over $10,000 in sales. That from that night, from the moment that my video went viral to the moment that I woke up. And it was insane. So it was a demonstration for me with actions and data, because data is so important to me with the mind of an engineer, with data that when you have a relationship with your ancestors, when you listen to what your ancestors are saying, and when you ask for help based on this relationship that you build your entire life, your ancestors deliver. So that changed my life, not just my grandmother's coming and my grandmother coming and telling me something in a dream, but also giving me the next steps and the really showing me that this was what he was supposed to do. So I actually quit my job. So that day that happened, I sent an email to the one that was my boss and I said, I'm going to leave my job in 3 months. I'm moving on into something else. I'm changing my life. And I did. And that was really for me an example. And I think I want to give this example to whoever is interested in working with their ancestors. It is that amazing. It is that amazing when we establish this relationship and we give them the opportunity to connect with us and we show up in reverence because it's not a taking relationship. It's a conversation. It's an honoring. It's a healing. We're showing up to the relationship asking, what can I do for you? Is there something that you didn't get to heal when you were here on the planet that you would like to heal now? Is there anything that I can do for your kids? Is there anything that I can do for whoever else in the family is alive? I invite you to take this story as an example of what it can be. And I'm sure that this is a small story compared to other many stories that may exist out there, right? On people's relationships with ancestors. But
I love how you talk about it, you're building a relationship with them. It's not just gimme, gimme, gimme. And it what comes to mind when you talk about that is that so often when people are talking about ancestors and working with them and healing them, it becomes this shame and blame. Like you had to do this in your life 5 generations ago, and now this is how it shows up in my life. So I need to cut that part of the family tree off, etc. I mean, and there is some discernment, there is some protection in that. But I love how in your book you talk about how this is reciprocity, that you are healing them, and then they're bringing stuff to you, and I just that is so important when you're working with spirit, when you're working with the other realms, is that you're not just saying, I'm doing my spell and saying, boom, you're going to show up for me. You've built a relationship with your ancestors, with the spirits, with the ingredients. And you talk about that all through the book. It's something that I feel so passionate about myself. And you are so eloquent with it in your book. So I just wanted to point that out, that is something that, again, I was shouting out loud as I'm reading different things in the book going, I know, right? And so I really synced up with what you were saying, especially with the fact that we're coming from different traditions. I felt all the synchronicity with all of that. And the other thing I loved how you so eloquently put is consent with your ancestors. That it's not only consent of you working with them, but them working with you. Sometimes they're not ready. Sometimes they have their own healing process. And I love how the consistency of that in your messaging. And I wanted to get your perspective on the ancestors that did damage to you, maybe that people have recently passed, or ancestors that you may have been afraid of or that were abusive to you, and how you deal with them. in doing the ancestor work, because it's the first thing that anyone complains to me about or says, no, I can't work with my ancestors because they're abusive to me.
So we do not have to work with the abusive ancestors. I don't I don't believe I believe in forgiving people, yes, but I do not believe that there is an obligation. And sometimes some of those relationships are still very ingrained in us and or programmings and or wounds that we're carrying. And I think that putting somebody to work with somebody that hurt them can be very detrimental instead of very beneficial, especially because there is hundreds or thousands other ancestors that we can work with. But when we have ancestors that are ancestors that created damage directly to us, one of the things that we can do is that just simply say, I am not ready yet. I appreciate that you're coming to talk to me right now. I am not ready yet. And maybe I will never be ready, or maybe someday I will be ready, but please understand that. And I think on the other side too, on the other side of the coin, sometimes we hurt people, consciously or unconsciously, depending on who we are at a soul level. And then if we try to reach to someone that passed who we may have hurt, they also deserve their peace. And they also deserve to have the capacity to tell us no, and us understanding that no and respecting that no. On the other hand, if we are ready to repair those relationships, if we are ready to have those conversations, if we are ready, like if we feel like we have done the healing, if we feel like we can apply some forgiveness into it, if we feel like we can understand now that they have passed the reason of their ways and their actions, because sometimes somebody passes and maybe they weren't the best of humans, but when they pass, their soul understands the damage that they made, and then they come back and try to repair the relationship, right? And if we are ready, then it can also be very healing, because then we are closing the cycles that we weren't capable of closing when they were alive. So
Absolutely.
it
Yeah.
depends.
Because, I mean, okay, just because they're dead doesn't mean they're smart, number one. And number two, when someone passes on, they are healing. They're shedding their mortal coil. They're shedding that mortal coil of experiences and emotional triggers and things like that. And it doesn't happen 5 days after they pass, or sometimes even 5 years after they pass. It takes a while. And the bigger the healing, the longer it takes. And there's no, just like grief, there's no time limit on it. It just, I know from my experience, I've had different mediums telling me that my mom's coming through, and my mom passed about 10 years ago. Wow, it's 10 years ago. And I'm still not ready. I'm still not ready, and that's okay. We had a challenging relationship, and I'm still doing my healing, and it's happening faster now that she's passed on. It's okay. And I think that's important when you're doing ancestor work, to say, I honor you. Like I honor my mother, I honor my father on my ancestor altar. And yet I'm not working with them. I'm honoring them to slowly do the healing work. And I loved how you talked about the boundaries in working with ancestors. With like, you said in your book, they can come to you while you're cooking or in the living room when you're alone, but not your bedroom, not while you're driving with your family. It's in the way I was taught is I have a very specific place for my ancestors. I have an ancestor altar. So having that is equal, and having that boundary is really important. Have they crossed that boundary for you?
Usually not. Unless it's like a very, very, very urgent situation where they must reach out to me. They do, but otherwise, for the most part, the boundaries are respected. I think like my grandma usually is the one that doesn't respect the boundaries much. But she comes from a place of love, so I understand her. It's also, I think, like in our elder tradition, right? For us, or elders, they have this position of hierarchy, whether we want it or not. And now that she has passed and she's just an important guide in my life, she's like, nope, I'm talking to you. You listen, sit down. But yeah, but there, for the most part, there's respect. And I feel like if, for example, if I'm in my bedroom, right, like that's one of the places where I say, please give me space, give me privacy. They will come in my dreams. So I'm still in my bedroom, but they're not hanging around when I'm there. right, in the bathroom or with my husband, but they will show up in my dreams. So they will still come and deliver the message while I'm in my bathroom, but they're finding an ethereal space for communication and not in the way that I will just be there and they will show up. I don't see them necessarily, but I feel their presence and I hear them. Occasionally I see them, but for the most part I hear them.
It's interesting when you can hear them and feel them, but you're not paying attention. Like, listen, I'm getting something done right now, and then they will do things. It says you have to pay attention, or you need to feed me. And the way I was trained in my personal tradition is that I bring them offerings of food, flowers, coffee, sometimes alcohol, if they ask for it, because I am giving them energy from this world so they can use that to affect change in this world. So that's, and also, giving them, honoring them is another big part of it. Is I'm thinking of you, I'm giving you a part of my daily life, part of my breakfast, or a piece of cake that you like, or whatever. And it gives them the energy they need to affect my world here. And it, again, I don't just like throw the piece of cake on the altar and walk away. It's a conversation. And it's interesting because I've had clients where I've had to say, can you tell me about what an offering looks like for you? I say, well, I cut a piece of cake and I put it to the altar and I say, thanks. I'm like, okay, I think you're missing the biggest piece here, which is having quiet time in a conversation because we all get busy. And so I love that
Or
you
cooking the
literally.
recipe while you're talking to them, because one of the ways that I connect to them is in the kitchen. Like I'm cooking and then I have a line of people showing up to give me their opinions about the recipes because they always want to tell me what am I supposed to put in my food because that's our love language in Mexico, right? Or at least for my family. But I
It
feel like
isn't,
that.
and cooking is so ancestral. If you think about it, we've always cooked. We've always prepared food for our families or had food prepared for us. So that is what a brilliant way to connect with your ancestors. And I also love how when you're in the part of your book where you're talking about ancestors, where you addressed spiritual bypassing, which is something that is just chapping my lips when I see people talk about if you're just vibrating good enough, if you're just apparently you're not doing your magic right, or don't have a high enough vibration because you are not getting what you want. And I'm like, that is such spiritual bypassing, and it is so unhealthy for us. What does spiritual bypassing look like when you see your clients do that? What does it look like?
Ooh, that's a deep one. That's a deep one. Like it comes different for different people and different, depending on their traditions, that's how they bypass themselves. And depending on the abuse that they went through, whether personal or cultural or religious or family, that's how it manifests for them. But one of the biggest ways of experiencing spiritual bypassing for myself and what I am observing, it's that bypassing minimizes who you are. Spiritual bypassing excuses the unhealthy traits, the toxicity, the ways that are not there to help expand your soul. It's like an excuse and a minimization of your sacredness and your divinity. And at the same time, we were talking about all that is happening to you because your frequency is not high enough, or you haven't forgiven enough people, or you don't have divine love in your heart and whatever. And people forget, and a lot of us, it happens to all of us, we forget that yes, we are sacred and we are part of the universe and we are divine, but we are also living the human experience.
Yeah.
And the human experience is a shit show. The human experience comes with so many opportunities and so many problems and so many stopping points that are there to make us better, right? And to heal and to love more. But then at the same time, we cannot deny them. All like I call it life gets lifey or shit happens, really. Is the exact thing. Spiritual bypassing will be trying to pretend that the things that are happening for us are happening because we are broken or not worthy or not good enough, or we are not showing up for the task of working for our magic. We also, we cannot be tending to the altar 100% of the time. If you have children, you have to go feed them. You have to drive them to school or put them on the bus so that they go to classes, right? You cannot forget of living the human life.
And then there's a process of when you're healing. You don't go from 0 to 60 or 0 to 100 and say, oh, I had a 5-minute meditation and now I'm healed from this. One of my favorite phrases from someone I know, he talks about sitting in the sock. You got to sit in the sock. When you're healing, it's like debriding a wound. You have to, it hurts at first and it is a process but sitting in the suck allows you to process, and that's definitely not bypassing. But when you not getting stuck in it, sitting in it saying, this sucks. This is not a great experience. This is what happened to me. I don't like it. And then giving yourself enough time to do that and then saying, now, how am I going to heal it? And you talk about healing that inner process. You phrase it in a lot of different ways, but your book is really about, everything is about healing that inner process and that it's so important and it affects your magic so much, because if you don't heal the thing that's broken, then how can your magic work when it's hitting something that's broken?
Right. It's fragmented and you're working, we bring in all this energy, but the vessel has holes. And if the vessel has holes, that energy, that light, that frequency, whatever it is that you're attracting, it's going to leave. It's going to leak. In the book, I talk about a story of somebody that I worked with long time ago. This is when I was just beginning my career in technology. And I had just broken up with someone that was like my first relationship that I had in my 20s that felt like a terrible thing. And I was crying in the parking lot. And this person who was the CEO of the company, it was a very people person. He saw me crying in the parking lot and we had a conversation about what was happening in my life. And then he told me that I had to go home and cry the feelings for 3 days. And he said, I'm going to go and talk to your boss and tell your boss that you are not going to be here. I think it's probably a Thursday or a Friday. And then he said to me, go buy a bottle of wine and a box of pizza and watch all the sad movies that you can watch and then stay in your house crying for 3 days. And then on Sunday afternoon, you start watching happy movies. And then on Monday, you show up with a clean face and you already cried all the tears. So it's a little bit of compartmentalizing the feelings in a way, because you have to put a boundary, right? You're not going to say to yourself, I'm going to cry for 10 days nonstop, but you can give yourself the opportunity to cry the feelings for 2 or 3 days and then have a plan to get out of the feelings.
Right.
Obviously, it's a spiral. So you may go back to the crying again at some point, but you have to feel the feelings. In that feeling of the feelings, there's a lot of healing.
And then it brings me to the part of your book that I was very excited about, because it's literally my practice, is you call them limpias. Can you say that word for me?
Yeah,
The cleansing. Limpia? Oh, I did it right.
yeah.
Yay me. And yay you for writing about it. Because you wrote about how this is a natural process that you do in, your aunts, your mothers, it's when something big happens, you do this natural limpia or cleansing ritual. And he talked about how when something traumatic happens, it's like a little piece of your soul is broken away. And that's a huge part of what I do in the Akashic Records and then the healing work that I do, is that we heal those soul parts. And I just loved what you talked about with that. Can you talk about more like what that is for you and what that looks like, different cleansings?
Absolutely. So in our tradition, we call it limpias, which is the art of cleansing. Limpia translates as cleansing, right? The energetic cleansing. But when we go into a more profound level of it, is when it comes to the conversation of susto. Susto being the equivalent of a piece of our soul fragmenting through trauma or through an experience or through a situation, whatever that is, that breaks a part of us and breaks a part of our soul. And that part leaves our body, lives our essence, and goes live somewhere else. Past, present, future, multiple directions, underworld, depending on what you believe in, right? And then we navigate life incomplete because there is a piece of ourselves that is missing. So part of our healing journey is to call back all those pieces that left, and that to come back in a way that they are whole, that they are light, that they are loved, so that we can reincorporate them on us. So the process of cleansing, it's yes, releasing any kind of energetic stagnation that we may have, but also replenishing our soul and replenishing our energy by bringing back all those pieces. And if we go even deeper, it's also repairing those cracks that were originated in our cocoon of light, in our centro de energía, so that this doesn't happen again, right? Because if we bring back the pieces, but we didn't repair our energetic field, then pieces could leave again. So it's a lifetime process. But at the same time, I do like to give people the warning that I am not saying that we are not whole. What I am saying is that we forgot about it. And we forgot about it because a piece left. And we have to bring it back so that you can remember that you're whole, that you can remember your divinity, that you can remember your sacredness. Because you can't, because you can hold it, right?
I'm so excited to hear you talk about that. And this isn't traditions outside of what I've studied, because this is such a huge part of my process. And it's a shamanistic process, which you are. And one of the interesting things when I was reading in your book, I was reading about the process of cleansing and that involves the soul parts. I had not put those two together. To me, those were two different steps. And I love how you put that together. And the other thing I do, how sometimes you have to clear soul parts of other people out of you, because sometimes they get stuck. If someone's trying to suppress or control you, sometimes it's a little soul part in there that keeps that story going, or that record playing in the groove that doesn't make sense in your life. Real quick, as a mid-show reminder, you're listening to Chance with Aunt Jackie, and I'm here with Wendy Mata, and we are talking about ancestors, culture, limpias, and how to work your magic in real life care. And please like and subscribe if you're liking the show, so you can get notification for the next one coming up. For someone who has never experienced this kind of cleansing, what could it feel like or change in your life?
Well, you've never had a limpia before, or an energetic cleansing, right? Of any kind. One of the things that I've seen people experiencing is that, number one, they feel lighter. You feel like you are not carrying heaviness in your body anymore. And of course, it varies person to person. Some people carry a lot. Some people are living a lighter experience in life and they're carrying less. Their soul contract is different. But if we are carrying a lot and we go through a process of cleansing, you immediately feel better. Immediately. Like, it's not something. I have so far never seen someone that didn't feel better. And it's not about me working on their energy, because it's not about me. It's the fact that there's a process to release energy, and it's the energy leaving their body. That's the magic of it. It's not me, it's what I'm doing. It's the process, right? They feel lighter because that stagnation doesn't exist in their body anymore. They sleep better right away. They eat better right away. I have seen people that have told me that they haven't laughed in a really long time, and they're laughing. I have seen people. I had a client one time that she came to me and she looked very dull, and her eyes were very, like, we say apagado in Spanish, which is like, it's almost like the switch is off.
Yes.
She's an alive person, right? But it was just like, there's no light in it. And I remember that after we did the process of Olympia, I kid you not, she looked like she was 15 years younger. And she looked like her eye color changed. And it went from this dull gray to this beautiful baby blue, that she saw herself in the mirror and she told me, Wendy, this is the eyes that I had when I was 7 or 8 years old. Wow. Before all the bad stuff happened. And that version of me is back. So, of course, you're going to get as much as you put into, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if you're showing up skeptical and you're letting your mind not seeing the magic and not seeing the work that can happen energetically, you will bypass yourself and you will allow this magic to happen on your body. But it's just a freeing. It's just simply taking off the stagnation. An example will be, right? How will you feel if you didn't shower for 10 days?
100%. And I talk about, as I say this stupid little phrase, if you don't clear before you do your work, your magic to affect change in your life, It's like taking brand new socks and washing them in dirty water. You're just going to have dull gray socks. You're bringing this brand new energy into your energetic space, which is heavy and downtrodden, and reliving all these experiences that are stressing you out. I find that for me, in my personal experience, when I do a cleansing, it's like I get to let go of the negative experiences that keep playing in my mind. Get to let go of all of what I'm carrying for other people because I love them and I'm concerned about them. I get to let go. I get cleared of emotions that are trying to process out, but they're like blocked because, I haven't cleared. I mean, I think when we grieve, we're processing these emotions that come out of our aura, but sometimes they get stuck because we think we need to hang on to them. So
Right.
it's not that.
Also, we're carrying other people's energies and other people's fragments and other people's cords and other people's soul pieces. So
Yes.
as we're going through a cleansing, a deep limpia, a deep healing, we are going to continue to carry those pieces too. And we do not need to carry those pieces. Those belong somewhere else, or they can go back to the earth or to the universe. But we cannot navigate life in our full potential, whatever that looks like, if we
Hmm.
are clogged
Right.
with all that energy.
And when I was reading that part in the book, it reminded me of a practice that Kabbalists talk about. Is like getting back to your seed self, the seed that God gave you. And then they have a practice of cleansing and healing so you can get back to that original seed and heal that seed. So as I was reading that, I'm like, this sounds very familiar to, get, like you said, getting back to the person you were, getting back to that innocent inner child who has all the potential in the world.
I call it the original frequency. You go back to your source code, you go back to your
Yes.
original frequency. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Because you talk about with your ancestors, like the blueprint that you have, and which makes total sense based on your work experience having the blueprint, and that it gets other people. If you think about like the blueprint and the engineers, the architects that are doing it, but then if you have more architects messing with it, and then this person comes in and changes this, and this person come in and changes that, because that's what happens in real life. You look back at the blueprint and you're like, what happened? I'm not building a house anymore. I'm building a dentist's office, and I don't want a dentist's office. And in this process of clearing, the thing that I love that you talked about is that this is not a replacement for mental health, physical health. Use this in conjunction with your therapist and your doctor. And for me, again, it's so critical. Again, I was yelling at your book going, yes, thank you for saying that. Because I think they can go hand in hand. I mean, if you use your magical practice in conjunction with what you're doing with your therapist, your doctor, your lawyer, it can become so very powerful, a very powerful experience. How do you teach people how to bring that all together?
I always ask people to have a list of who is their support group. And that support group will be perhaps your therapist or your doctor or a nurse or a lawyer or, whatever your circumstances are in life, because everybody's circumstances are different. And then ask who in your support group is meant to help you in certain situations. And I think magic and healing can help you in all situations because we have healing for everything, spells for everything, and chants for everything, right? We have herbs for everything. Whatever you need, there's a spell for that. But that is not the only thing that we do. Who else needs to be involved? Do you have to have a talk with your lawyer? Do you have to involve your therapist? Do you have to talk to your doctor? Is this hormonal? I always ask people when they come to me and they tell me something, I always ask, do you check your hormones? Especially if you're a woman in your 40s.
Yes.
Very menopause, bitch. So
It's real. I feel that we're just starting to talk about that in this world because it was something our mothers never talked about. They just took it. They just took it and said, well, this is what life is. But I don't think we need to anymore. And I think,
absolutely not. So did you check your hormones? How is your diet? Have you been eating fiber?
yeah. One thing that I think that people have a hard time understanding is a difference between their inner process and their inner struggle, and then they're being cursed or attacked. Or maybe something's energetically unsafe. So how do you help people differentiate between this? Like, okay, no, you're not cursed. You're dealing with your own stuff. Or, okay, this may look like a curse.
Curses and hexes do happen, but I think a lot of the people that are trying to do curses and hexes are actually not very skilled practitioners. There's some very good ones out there. I'm not saying that they're not. I'm not saying, but there's a lot of them that they don't know what they're doing. But the first question really is, I mean, could it be a curse? Yeah, who knows? Could it be a hex? Yes, who knows? But the question is this a lesson that keeps repeating in my life? And the first time that he came, it was easy peasy, but I didn't get it. So he showed up again, and then again, and then again, and then again. Because if that's the case, it's very unlikely that it's a curse. It's very likely that you cause, whether we like it or not, the mess. Because your subconscious is sending you the circumstances that you finally learn the lesson and you can move on.
I love that. 100%. I just want to like praise on that statement because that's exactly what I talk about. It's like, okay, someone really can't send negative energy to your strength. So if you're feeling fantastic in your relationship, if you have a solid relationship and somebody's jealous of that and they're sending you bad energy or jealous energy, it's not going to hit you there. It's going to hit you. So like, let's say you have back problems. It's going to make your back worse. So what's the lesson? The lesson is that this is the weak part or the part that needs healing. And so that's where that energy leaks into. It's like the weak part of the dam, shall we say.
Right, right. And it's also everything is happening for us, not to us. So if something is showing up the weakness, I think it's a wonderful teacher that is showing up, showing us that area of our life could be better. And that area of our life should be the next thing to prioritize in our healing. That way, it's strong next time. Plus the beauty of transmutation, right? Like the more we do, the more we do, we also understand that we can see the lesson, learn the lesson, and then take that energy and transmute it into something beautiful instead of transmuting it into pain.
Perfect. 1000%. I love that because you have your perspective. So it's the same energy that's around you, whether it's negative energy, positive energy. It really is energy. It's how that energy, you perceive that energy to be. So it's energy. You can use it. You can transmute it. It can become whatever you need it to become. I want to flip back to the introduction of your book. And I love how you touch upon cultural appropriation. And you have like a little spell in the book. Like if you are any of these things, none of this will work for you. But also you give permission, like you're not sharing anything that's a closed tradition, and you give permission for people to use this, learn from it, incorporate it. And you really define what a cultural appropriation is, because this is a book about Mexican folk magic. And right now in our country, we are not being respectful of our Southern neighbors and who have become part of the American experience. And I could really go down a rabbit hole with this, but it hurts my heart that this is happening. And I also think it's bringing some things to light that we have taken advantage of and taken for granted, the influence of the Hispanic, the Latinx culture in our country. And I think we need to take a really good look at ourselves as a country about why all these people are low paid. But that's a different show, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it is a show. But I think that's really critical. Even when we first started talking before we started the show, I talked about how this is a tradition that has always intrigued me. And I feel it's so beautiful. Like Dia de los Muertos is actually something that I incorporated in my own practice. I'm certainly not going to teach about it, but it's something that I do for myself. And we're missing out. And I got a little worried that if I studied this, I would become someone who is appropriating this. And so thank you for that permission to learn. We need to learn about each other's cultures. You've traveled the world too, so you've learned a lot.
One of the biggest blessings that I've ever had was to learn from other people. And I will not be who I am without learning from all the people that I was a student from. whether they were my teachers, my actual teachers, or where they were somebody, screaming at me in the road when I was driving as a teacher. Yes. And I think that also in our Mexican practices, a lot of them are indigenous practices. And yes, a lot of them are close practices, but also a lot of them are very global because Mexico is a soup of people. We have people from all over the world and we have learned from many different traditions. We have African people coming to Mexico. We have Jews coming to Mexico. We have Dutch people coming to Mexico. We had all over. So a lot of it's hard to unweave what exactly originated in Mexico and what didn't. Of course, there are some things that is very obvious that they're indigenous practices that I believe that they belong to the indigenous practices of Mexico. But many other ones, we cannot claim ownership of those practices because I feel like we will be, number one, limiting ourselves and limiting other people. And I don't think that we have the right to gatekeep things that don't necessarily belong to us. And in my travels, one of the things that I've learned when I started traveling the world was that what I thought was Mexican, what I thought came from my ancestors, what I thought came from my land, I was suddenly seeing people in India doing the same things. I was suddenly seeing people in China doing the same things. I was suddenly seeing people in Taiwan doing the same things. I was suddenly seeing people in Brazil when I was in Brazil. I spent some time in Brazil doing the same things. The things that I thought that were Mexican, and they weren't. And I'm not saying that they were not Mexican. I'm sure that a lot of people in Mexico channel those practices, but a lot of those practices came from source, right? It's just something that in our sacredness and in our divinity, we got to download some of those practices and we practice those practices, of course, with processes and systems that apply to our countries.
Yes.
And in ways that apply to our countries, but I don't think that we can claim ownership of certain wisdom. I think the difference also is like if somebody honors cultural practices from Mexico and reads about them and learns about them with respect, that is beautiful. The line is crossed when somebody tries to teach it. Like you're saying, right? Like you love the Day of the Dead. I mean, who will not want to honor their ancestors on the Day of the Dead? It's such an amazing day that the flip will be if suddenly somebody was saying, well, I have been reading about the Day of the Dead. Even if I'm not Mexican, suddenly I'm going to write a book about the Day of the Dead. That's where you take the red flag and weave it.
Yes. Yeah. As we're coming to the end of the show, can you share a simple way that someone can begin connecting with, building a relationship, and honoring their ancestors?
Absolutely. Just tell them that you're ready. Go outside and say, I'm here ready for a conversation, or in your kitchen if you like cooking and you like being in your kitchen, or with a cup of tea, that's your thing, or a cup of coffee, or whatever it is that you drink. Just say, I'm ready. I would love to have a conversation with you. Please. I think it's key though to say, I'm ready or I'm willing to play and explore. Do tell them, please communicate with me in a way that I will understand. Because
yes. Oh, yes.
On the other side, right, they have their own language and they have changed it and shifted a little bit. And now they are in the ethereal space navigating and they may have forgotten how to talk human. So you want to tell them, please come and talk to me in a way that I will understand, in a way that is going to be irrefutable evidence that it is you.
I say, whenever I talk to my ancestors or my spirits, I say, and guide me in ways that I can understand and follow. Because if you're telling me to move across the country, I might not be able to follow that immediately. So show me how to do that, like the irrefutable proof that you're talking about.
Yeah, make it happen because, okay, I'll do what you're saying, but please offer the resources, mind, energy, money, everything in between, because otherwise we're still living in this planet. We have to afford it.
We still have to use currency. What is one way someone who's listening can call themselves back after a really hard and overwhelming experience?
You can say, I call all the pieces of the self that left to come back in love, light, and abundance. I call the pieces of the self that left to come back in love, light, and abundance. I call all the pieces of the self that left to come back in love, light, and abundance. That's an easy And in love, because we want the loving pieces that return. In light, because if those pieces were somewhere where it was a little dark and they need to shift into light again to come back. And in abundance, so that they come fully.
I love that. And for someone who is listening who may work with a lot of people in their day to day, what is a cleansing they can incorporate in their day or their week to make sure they're not carrying the energy of other people?
For something like that, especially for somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience yet remembering all these spiritual technologies, you can work with air. You can go outside of your house if your mobility allows it and ask the wind to come and cleanse you from any kind of spiritual cords or attachments or programming that you may have in your body, and ask the wind to help you. And she usually says yes. If you do not have a lot of wind in the area where you live at, you can work with fire. You can imagine, feel, sense, and visualize that you're taking out of your body any kind of cords and stagnation that doesn't belong to you, and send it to the fire. You can go and bare feet outside and ask the earth if it will give you permission to extract any of those cords or stagnations from your body, and ask the earth to absorb it. Or you can, I think, if you live near the ocean, get in the water and ask the water of the ocean, the waves, to wash away any kind of condensation or quartz. And the beauty of it is that salt neutralizes anything that you have with you. So the salt will neutralize it. It will melt it away, wash it away, and it will also allow you to come out clean. So be sure that you have a next step, which is you're cleansing. What are you going to do in your energetic bodies after your cleansing? So don't go get on the ocean and cleanse and then come home and watch all the news.
Yeah.
Like instead have a happy dance or watch a happy movie or be in your community or have a meal that gives you a lot of joy and pleasure, so that you are feeling the holes back with better things.
Awesome. And on a parting note, what do you want people to remember about their own power after reading your book?
It's such a beautiful question. That they are the magic.
Awesome. I love it. I am so happy to be talking to you. And you have a website.
Bruja.us or brujacurandera.com, which is basically the title of the book, then .com.
Perfect. And they can find all of your information there. Do you have, are you teaching any classes or?
So if you go to my website, you can see the schedule of events. We run summits and online festivals 3 or 4 times a year. Our next big festival is going to be happening in November of 2026. Just go into the website and find the link to join. And this festival is it's actually connected to the Day of the Dead. It's called Ancestral Magic Festival. And what we do, Ancestral Magic Summit. And what is happening is that we're getting 20 speakers from around the world. So it's not just Mexican tradition. And we talk about how to honor our ancestors. We talk about how to heal the ancestral wounds in our lineage. And we also talk about how to do things like creating an altar or connecting to the ancestors that want to talk to us, and how to recognize which ones we should be talking to and which ones we should not be talking to. And yeah, so if you like learning things, people like learning things, the summits are a really good way to come and experience, yes, my work, but also the work of all the other people that comes to the summits.
And can people schedule a session with you through your website, get a healing session or reading?
So I don't really do a lot of one-on-one work anymore. What I do is that I teach classes. So I teach classes for people to learn how to heal themselves.
Love it.
Or I have a certification where I teach people how to become professional healers. And I also have a certification called the Fire Priestess Program, which it's centered on fire. I love fire. So yeah, so I teach people how to create a relationship with fire, how to honor fire, and how to use fire for healing.
Love that. Wendy, thank you so much for coming on to Chats with Aunt Jackie. This has been fun. I have 7,000 more points that I want to talk to you about in your book. So hopefully you'll come back and
Thank
chat
you.
more about magic soon.
Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you everyone for listening to Chats with Aunt Jackie. Please like and subscribe. And so that way other people can find me, and you'll know when the next show is coming up. You can reach me at auntjackie.com. That's AUNTJACKI.com. And there you can book a session with me, find out what's going on, read my blogs, tune into the shows. Thank you all for being here with us, and I cannot wait to see you next time.